hearing stories of like the evil merchants.
Right.
You had the impression that the majority of the outports had a merchant who, in exchange for fishing equipment, supplies, food, was paid with fish in kind.
Right.
But I don't know, like the Bonavista fish plant, it's still there. I mean, there's poster. It's a museum now.
Ryan's premises. Yeah.
The Ryan's premises. They're talking about him as being well known and respected because he was fair.
Right.
So it sounded like that was the exception.
Yeah, probably so. Yes.
Among the merchant group.
Right. Yes.
But I mean, through Robert Mellon and staying in Tilting, where he renovated a house and he helped preserve that community's architecture, vernacular architecture. He had evidence and he had experiences of a high degree of cooperation that was not just necessary for survival, but it was a kind of it's like more what you were just talking about, a kind of social cohesion that was willing and was beneficial for everybody. A kind of an organic cooperative based on what? They were Christians. Maybe there was some input from their religious beliefs, but the environment dictated it as well to survive.
Yeah, I think the building blocks were already there. They just needed a framework that cut out the greedy merchant. Replace the greedy merchant with a benevolent cooperative that's going to distribute the wealth. Then everything else just becomes pleasurable, like the ability, as you say, to entertain themselves. So every Saturday night there'd be a dance somewhere, and they all go out and dance like crazy. Did you ever see that the NFB films, the Fogo Island series from 1966, 1967?
Yeah.
So Colin Lowe, and he's got one of them is John and Sue get married or something like that. So it's the wedding, and then it's the dance after the wedding. And it's from 1966. And honest to God, it's just priceless because these old guys, and they hold the woman's hand up here, right? And they're like, and they're all very rigid, but they're really flying around, and you think, well, I mean, they've been doing this for generations and generations. So like their ability to entertain themselves is just built right in, and that includes the music and the liquor and the ability to dance and knowing everybody. I mean, a lot of the dances were kind of like square dances or lancers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, passing and twirling, and they all knew all that stuff, So they just went ahead and did it. So, I mean, the quality of life pieces were already there. The ability to entertain and help each other and get along were already there. They just needed to get a little bit more economic base, right? So that's, I think, the era that we arrived in St. John's was just kind of the fruition of that period. And I think it collapsed fairly quickly, like Coker, I should say. That thing collapsed, after he died, it just fizzled right out because he was the driving force. He was the only thing that kept it going, unfortunately. But there was that little era. And so, the people who grew up there were familiar with that period, still carried a bit of that spark with them,
That book I was mentioning, Professor Webb, Jeff Webb, I think, he was talking about, maybe it was Joey Smallwood, or somebody had the idea that the object of, they founded the university, Memorial University, they founded a university, and the object of the study for the university was Newfoundland. It's almost like a revolutionary concept. We're not going to study what they're studying in, the classics or humanities. A big focus of the university was Newfoundland is rich in cultural heritage. That is the object of study. And they had scholars who were extremely collaborative in the way they worked, and they were sharing research, and I think they called it like creative collaboration was a characteristic of their work. So I don't know all the pieces. I feel like I wish there must be people who have sort of studied that and have a really good overview of it all and the historical context and everything. But you and I definitely had an experiential connection with it that's really positive.
Well, Small was, what was it called? The Book of Newfoundland or the Encyclopedia of Newfoundland must have come out of that. And that went on for years and years and years, finishing that up.
And the Newfoundland Dictionary came from that period.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the whole folklore thing, like the folklore department at MUN, they brought in Whittleson and Hewson, and there's another one, like British folklorists, right? Anthropologists, who went out in the field and recorded the last of that era of a cappella folk singers, and I did a lot of work transcribing that material. So I became very, very familiar with the Newfoundland folk song, original Newfoundland folk songs, right? Because that was the original folk singing tradition was a cappella. They didn't accompany themselves, right? Piano, no, they sang a cappella. So it was kind of like a theater genre in a way, because they would also act out the songs. They were very animated when they were singing the songs. And it was a key piece of the entertainment. So you have the dancing, but then you always had the singers. Oh, the singers singing. Oh, someone's got to start singing. And then, and then they'd gather around the singer. And they all knew the songs, but I mean, they were riveted because these singers were really good singers. They just had the ability to make you cry all over again. I mean, some of them, like Cornelius Roses from the Port-au-Port Peninsula, he was just fantastic. He died really young, right? In his 40s, I think. But his delivery of those folk songs, French folk songs, were just riveting.
But was this both a French and a British Isles tradition, or just the French?
Oh, both.
Both.
Yeah. So and Kenneth Peacock got involved in this too, because he was up in Ottawa. I'm not sure where he was from, but he was collecting for the National Archives, right?
Right.
But he was collecting all over the island. And then the MUN people were around at the same time, right?
You said you were transcribing. That means you were listening to recordings,
right,
and you could hear, and you could write the notes out.
Right.
You could write it down.
Right.
You have that ability.
Yes.
Well, that's
I transcribed, I think, all of the French section of the French Newfoundland folk songs. Yeah, all the French Newfoundland folk songs that were recorded up till about 1978, I think.
Wow.
I transcribed all of them. But, I mean, it was kind of an errant project in a way. I mean, like, it's hard to decide what the actual goal is in doing that. As a record, as a paper record of that song, well, it's just that version, that particular performance of that song. And if it's intended to be legible and reproducible by other musicians who might learn it from that piece of paper, it might not be that successful, because the original singer is performing that piece, is improvising that piece, like the bar patterns, the keys, the time signatures don't really matter. They're not sticking to, unless it's a dance piece or whatever. But the ballads, they're really playing with the breath of it, and so to transcribe it literally the way they sang it would give you an interesting version of what they call the performance technique, but just listening to the recording would give you that too. So I did these really in-depth, detailed transcriptions, kind of like, well, they drop a beat there, and then they add a beat here, and then there's a big pause here, and then, which is all key to their performance technique, but it's not that useful information, you know what I mean?
So you're saying each performance could vary, it could differ.
Yes.
They would, some improvising.
Well, they wouldn't improvise with the words, but I think it would depend upon the
delivery could vary.
It could vary depending on the exact audience and circumstance. So some of these were recorded at folk festival, the earliest folk festivals. So the singers would be up at a microphone in front of a bunch of people. But that would have been, like, say, 10 years earlier, they would have been in a house party.
Yeah.
And so it's very different then, because the heat and the proximity of all the bodies and the excitement and so on, they might sing a much more vigorous, faster one that's much more, because there's been a lot of dancing that night. Like they're just reacting
a lot
to
of drink. Maybe.
Yeah, they're reacting to all the circumstances involved. So I mean, that was part of the art. You hold your audience, whatever it takes to hold your audience. You have that repertoire of techniques to do that, and you'll find that comes out in all the different ways they perform them.
And what was it? More British, Irish, Scottish, Gaelic?
Well, there was a. It kind of came down to the really good folk singers that were on the go at the time. This would have been like in the 60s mostly, right? Because Memorial, when did Memorial open? 62 or something, 60. Anyway, so they started going around and recording then. So there was a guy named Gordon Willis in Fogo who knew lots of songs, and he was a really good performer and didn't mind being recorded. Out on Port-au-Port, there was Josie Lacosta and Willie Robin and Cyril Robin and Cornelius Roses. And then other places, there were some singers down in Branch, and there were some singers out in Buena Vista Bay.
But some are French and some are not.
Yeah.
The ones who are not French, what's their ancestral background?
Mostly British, not so much Irish. British mostly, yeah.
Okay. And this, I didn't know about this. So the a cappella, the oral tradition, like a lot of history was transmitted through the generations through musical presentation.
Yes.
Through singing.
Ancient bards.
Chanting.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so it's a remnant of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was in university here at McGill doing music, I did a graduate course in my final year in ethnomusicology.
Yeah.
And I studied Korean pansori. So pansori is a solo. It's like opera, sung by a solo singer and accompanied by a drummer, and it's just fantastic stuff. I don't know if they perform it anymore, but I mean, but that ability is And I just thought when I started listening to the folk singers in Newfoundland that there's such a connection, like international connection in the storytelling traditions, right?
Yeah.
So the pansori stuff, I mean, I don't know what the words were about particularly, but it would have been legends, talking about legends, but these were like kind of like action comics, because the way she'd speed up and then like really, really dramatic, rhythmically dramatic, so it was like
a lot easier to remember.
But if you knew the words, I think it was very rich visually as well, right?
Uh-huh.
So all these techniques and the maintaining and transmission of oral histories and so on, right? It's all in there. All these songs that came over from France that they were still singing in the Port-au-Port in the 1970s, right? About Prince Eugene. So you have to look up, what was Prince Eugene? What was he all about? And you find out that Prince Eugene had something to do with the siege of Vienna in 1468 or something. It's like, it's vast, but I mean, that was like gripping performance material for the Port-au-Port Peninsula. They all knew those songs, right? Only some of them were really good at singing them.
It reinforces your ability to believe that oral traditions are successful, believable, credible.
Right.
Like when I was living in the north, a lot of Inuits, their own understanding of their own history, it's oral history,
Yes.
So sometimes we in the south would doubt, how can you save something unless it's written down? They don't even have a written language, but
right.
These oral traditions are powerful and they work.
Well, look at the Franklin's two ships, that they sank. They finally sort of, well, does anybody know anything? But yeah, they're right there. Sure enough, they were right there.
Yeah.
And how many years ago was that? Whether they sank,
200? I don't know. Yeah.
Amazing.
Or also like Hindu scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, even the Quran, it was chanted and all of those people chanted or sung, and it was repetitive, and there was rhythms, and it assisted memory.
Yes, right.
So this a cappella you're talking about in Newfoundland, I don't think I ever heard it. Did people like the Figgy Duff, the young people who were getting interested in their own history, they went around to the outports and recorded songs and incorporated them into their work. They changed them, modernized them, let's say. But I don't recall. There are a few French songs that Figgy Duff did, beautiful. And I think one or two are a cappella. Is that the same thing?
Well, a cappella means no instrumental accompaniment. So they're just winging it. They're just singing it with no accompaniment whatsoever.
But there is a like what's her name in Figgy Duff?
Pam Morgan.
Pam Morgan. She has a few songs. There's no instruments.
Yeah.
It's just
Anita Best did a lot of that too. Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was the pure tradition. But in the recordings that I listened to, so there was the youngest guy was Cyril Robin. So Willie Robin was his older brother, and he sang all his stuff really fast. He was a real, like he really liked the fast versions of things. Cyril comes along, and he's picking up country and western stuff from the radio in the 40s, right?
Right.
And he's learned to play guitar. So now he can perform those same songs, but he can add chords and rhythm to it. And it works. Like the he's a good musician. He figured out how to, he understood that these chords go with this song this way. And so he's now performing them with guitar very successfully, and then that just jumped off. So now anybody can do that. Figgy Duff, they'll all do arrangements of it because that's what you do, right? So, yeah.